This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it's time for Care Notes with da.wilber. The title of today's podcast, Things I Wish I Knew Before Starting Home Care. And I have to tell you, Doug, that I am so glad we're doing this because I have a friend who needs to start her parents with home care.
Mm,
And she's waited probably a year too long. Not that
mm,
home care won't be beneficial, but she has suffered being the home care provider 24/7 for the last year.
mm.
So maybe this will help her.
Yeah, well, I hope so. And at Care Notes, we endeavor to talk about the moments, the lessons, and emotions that come with caring for the people we love the most. And I hope that diving into this session today will help to open up avenues of conversation, and allow maybe people to think about home care at the right time, and in the right way.
Right.
And I think the coming up with the topic, the things I wish I knew before starting home care, is oftentimes best answered by those that have done home
Right.
care. And I know both you and I have dealt with this personally, um, and, and I think that that is a good starting point. Is to Now I've also dealt with it professionally and have done thousands and thousands of intakes. So I've oftentimes seen where people have had the same questions, or I kind of see the underlying themes that oftentimes happen with people that get repeated over and over and over again. Um, and I think if anyone's ever felt unsure about when to start home care, or how to choose the right caregiver, or whether you're doing the right thing, this is the right place,
Right.
hopefully, and as far as the conversation. So, because you've lived it, because you've cared for your own mother at home, I'd really like to kind of delve into and find out um, the, with some of the things that you've experienced,
Sure.
and maybe you could just explain in a nutshell how you uh, came to the point of needing care for your mom.
Well, it's interesting because it started way before her stroke. My father had passed away. My mom was living on her own. Um, and she was still driving,
Mm,
but she was having mini strokes, which I did not know. My one brother was the only one who was aware of it, but she had a pretty drastic mini stroke that put her in the hospital. And during the hospital visit, the doctor took her car keys away.
mm,
And that's when it hit me. Mom really can't 100% live at home, or she needs in home care. And I
yeah.
knew she wouldn't take in home care like you provide, even if the person only came for a couple of hours a day. So she moved into independent living, but this facility had independent living, assisted, and then nursing. And so she was pretty much in her own apartment doing well, except we realized my mom could not count her medicine. In fact, if you asked
Mm.
my mother how tall she was, she'd tell you 6'10". My mother
Well,
was 4'9". Nowhere near it. Um, and so that was the first sign we needed help for her. And so we brought somebody in that came in morning and night, helped her with her medication. And that was the beginning when we started to see, okay, what comes next? And
Yeah.
what next was she needed, a little bit more help. She wasn't going down to eat her meals. Um, and so we needed somebody who was going to guide her to go eat her meals. Not that she couldn't go down there, she just didn't want to. Um, but then she had a major stroke, and we had a choice: put her in nursing care or let her come home where she would rather be. Um,
Right.
Even though she was blind, she could sense where she was. And it was the most peaceful thing that I think we ever did. Um,
Mm.
and I've already told my boys, that's what I want, because she got to touch her things and be around things. And um, friends would stop in and
Yeah.
get real.
Yeah. No, that's great. What I'd like to do is maybe touch in on the big things that people ask, the questions. So the first one I would say is, or the the question, the statement people might make is, "I wish I knew when to start," um, or "When do I start?" would be the question that would go along with that. Um, so timing is critical, and it's also that part that is oftentimes so confusing for folks. And it gets coupled with the idea that, or the problem that so often our parents or our loved ones are resistant. Oh, I don't need care. Um, and the and what that leads to is that many families wait until there's a crisis, a fall, an ER trip, complete burnout before they ever say, they start doing things,
Right. Exactly.
and then they tell us, "I wish I had started sooner." And I can tell you, in all of those situations, those are not 100% preventable, because you can have someone with that person and they still can have a fall
Sure.
or other things, but you can minimize the chances of that happening. And so the people will say, "Gosh, I if I knew now what I knew then, I would have started sooner."
Yeah, I think
um
that's how my brother and I felt when she had the major stroke.
yeah.
If
Right.
somebody, even though where she lived, they did morning and evening checks to make sure everybody was, okay. She was okay at 9 o'clock when they did their evening check. But this happened sometime between 9 o'clock and the morning when they came in to help her with her pills.
Yeah.
Um, so our first reaction was, maybe we should have had 24/7 care. But then we look back and my mother was doing her laundry. She was doing all the normal things on a daily basis that she loved doing. And so
Right.
it was like, why would we have somebody living there with her? Well, now that I look back at it, knowing how many mini strokes she had, it probably would have been the
A good.
best thing
Yeah.
for us. But she still would have had the stroke. And that's the one thing that we had to come to terms with.
Well, and and it really kind of it drives home the point that when you begin home care early, um, several things happen. First of all, your loved one has time to adjust before it becomes urgent. It becomes easier emotionally for everyone involved, and then oftentimes things are caught before they
Right.
are a problem. And so, for example, those mini strokes may have been noticed more often and say, "Your mom's having a lot of these things
Right.
going on." Now, The one thing you can't do is kick yourself in hindsight. We're all doing the best that we can. And, sometimes you just don't know what you don't know. But I will say that starting early is rarely ever a bad idea.
Yeah.
Okay. And because you just, it really does become much easier. You've established a relationship already with an organization, and so if you have to up your hours, it's already set. You're not doing it in crisis mode, and we've talked about that um, uh, as well. So I guess you started to answer this, but when did you know it was time for your mom?
Um, I knew before my brothers, okay, and I was not the decision maker. Um, but probably yeah, we were visiting my mom for her 95th birthday, and I said to my one brother who was there, Mom's conversations are not typical of her. Um, my mother was always a very direct person, and um, I'm not sure where she got a sailor mouth when she got older, but she became almost vulgar sometimes in her language. And I
Mm,
kept saying, that's not her. And
right, yeah.
she would say it, and then all of a sudden you would hear the softness of my mom. So things were going back. And so I said, I think we need to look about moving her to assisted living. She'll have more attention. And my brother just looked at me and said, you're looking for trouble.
Mm,
Um, I do believe that was the time we should have moved her because again, if she was having those mini strokes, maybe they would have been caught. Maybe they could have been treated to some degree. But sadly, I had two brothers in denial. And
right, and that happens a lot where um, we look at our parents as invulnerable, um, as these powerful beings that were from our childhood, and we don't realize that they really aren't 6'10", because in our minds they are 6'10",
yeah,
even if they were 4 foot something. And so I I guess the question that I would have for you is, do you in the end think you waited too long? I mean, as a family. I mean,
right,
just
right.
looking at realistically, not kicking yourself, but do you feel like it was too long?
Yeah, I do. Um, all three of us, my two brothers and I, lived in different cities. Okay,
Yeah.
one in New York, one in California, and I'm here in Ohio. And we saw my mother amongst the three of us frequently, but not always together. And my one brother from New York, when he would go to visit my mom, he was on a whirlwind. He took her to restaurants and shopping and, all the things that she would used to like to do, but couldn't do because she was in her apartment and didn't drive.
Mm,
But I would see after he left, when I would talk to her on the phone, that she was confused. You know, she didn't really remember all the things that they did together. Um, and I think I've brought this up before. Every time my brother came to visit, she said she needed a pair of black slacks, and she had hundreds of black slacks in her closet. Um,
mm,
and those were the little things that I would keep saying to my brothers, like, don't you think this is odd? Don't you think? And the answer was, come on, she's happy.
yeah.
And, I could see it their way too, So do I kick myself or say, you know, I should have been stronger about it? No, because I know up until she had her stroke, she was happy where she was. And,
Yeah.
I have to look at that.
Well, and I think that's really kind of a powerful reminder that there really is no perfect time. I think it, it's like the best thing is it's probably there is a right time for starting to ease in. And maybe if there's a lesson from that, and I don't want to read lessons into your life,
Yeah,
but I do think that the lesson is, that if you can start even for a few hours a week, sometimes that can be a difference maker. It can help with that whole transition, and maybe catch something earlier. And it's you could have had a hourly, I mean, just some home care in there with her,
right,
and things still could have been missed, but maybe there would be more things reported because of the fact that you were all sort of separated
right,
and apart from your mom. There really wasn't the eyes on her that maybe having someone there saying, notice your mom, and confirming what you were seeing,
right,
another voice. Now, um, maybe once you get care, um, we might think, oh, that's everything, but it isn't. And you experience that isn't everything. One of the things that I hear from people is, I wish I knew it was okay to ask for the right fit, for the right caregiver for my parent. And so often we focus on skill, and that has to be part of the equation. But the right connection is also a part of that equation. That's what builds trust, that builds comfort. And I know that oftentimes families will feel guilty if they ask for a new caregiver, because it's not a right match. But that's truly a part of the process. I always want people to know that um, the relationship is deeply personal and that chemistry absolutely matters. Now, I'm going to give a caveat here, and that is sometimes uh, the expectations are unreasonable,
right,
and you have to have reasonable expectations. Um, Caregivers are not necessarily going to be Phi Beta Kappa from a prestigious university. That's just not typically the type of individuals that do it, but they can be caring and they can have connections. They can make a difference, and we've had physicians even as caregivers before because they retired and they just want to continue having care. We've had
right,
nurses that are retired, so it isn't that there aren't some like really exceptional situations where someone might be able to have something like that, but it is extraordinarily rare. Um, but I wonder if you went through that. Did you have to go through different caregivers before you got the right
we actually
match?
we actually did. So where my mother lived, um, there were caregivers, but most of them were only assigned, we could only get them assigned during the day. And they were excellent. There
Mm,
was they knew my mom, they loved my mom, and they they were good to us. However, at night we needed caregivers, and so the first company we went through came highly recommended by my cousin. And I thought, okay, she knows them. This is great. And the first night, the caregiver was 2 hours late.
mm,
And the person from the facility was staying until she said, I won't leave you. And I said, well, you're not going to get paid. At least I didn't think she was. I said, you were supposed to leave. And she goes, no, this is too much for you. So, anyways, person came 2 hours late and she wanted to know when her meal break was. I mean, everything.
Yeah.
And I
Okay.
just looked at her and I said, all I know is you're here till 6 o'clock in the morning. And I expect that you are going to be watching my mother. Now, if you need a meal break, which in that time span she would, I said, you let me know. I will sit with my mother and she'll probably be asleep. But if I need you, I'm going to come interrupt you. And she said, well,
Hmm.
that's not acceptable. So I accepted that for that first night. I didn't know I could fire her. I don't know where my head was. But the next morning, I did call the agency and they told me she was their best care worker. I said, well,
Wow.
if it's your best, you're fired. I don't want you. And so I called my friend who works for a hospice organization and I said, can you give me some leads? And she gave me another company that was absolutely wonderful. Um, and problem was their people already had other jobs. So they were like switching and maybe they came to my mom tonight, but tomorrow night they went someplace else. But whenever they were there, they were great. But I had to juggle who was coming when and where. Uh,
Mm.
so I then had to go to my third company. And the third company was probably the absolute worst. I think I've told this story before. The caregiver was so tired when she got there, she went underneath one of my mother's beds and went to sleep. Um, so what I ended up doing was I went back to the facility and I said, can your people rotate and do nights? My family will pay whatever it costs. You guys
Mm.
love my mom. You're good to me. I was getting no sleep.
Yeah.
And they turned around, they did that. And I could see how the organization worked with the caregivers. They were good to them. They
Right.
paid they paid them well. They were full-time employees. So when they were working a night shift for my mom, they may not be able to work the next day. So they brought in other people.
Yeah.
Um, but I want people to know if you don't think your person is being cared for properly, and that means it's more important for them to eat their lunch than to, change my mother. I mean, I was told by that one caregiver, well, if your mother gets soiled, you can change her.
Mm.
And my comment was, I don't really know how. You
Hmm.
know, I've never
Yeah.
changed an adult, you know, and I didn't want her to teach me. I thought that was too intimate for my relationship with my mother. I still wanted to be the daughter. So
Right.
make sure that you can communicate, and there are good caregivers out there and not so good. And um,
Yeah.
the company, I think it's based on the company. I mean, I've seen the training that you guys do.
Yeah.
I heard your people not even directly tell me, but make comments about this is a great place to work for. If that's the case, then you're going to be good with your client. And well, that takes a load off the family.
Yeah. And even a good company will have caregivers that will disappoint,
Yeah,
that will arrive late or do other things like that. And the critical thing is, and this would be my only warning for folks is I wouldn't take one individual in a situation and paint the whole organization
right.
with that because there have been times over the years where a caregiver has done something and I'm thinking, why? Why did you just do, we have training, we've taught you not to do that, we've done whatever, and it can still happen. And we will then discipline that person up to and including termination at times if that's what's needed. And that's what you want from a company, is that they have high expectations, and then they'll reinforce it because you can have situations where that can happen. But the bigger thing is to understand that you're allowed to advocate for the right fit. It's not complaining, it's caring. And that's important. There are times where someone may have the right skills, but may not be the right match, for a host of reasons. Hopefully not, sleeping underneath but, um, it yeah, hopefully it's just that the personalities aren't the great fit.
Right.
And so know again that being an advocate is not something to feel guilty about. I will bring this back to just one other statement having to do with that, though, and that is, if you find that as a client, um, that you have, you know, um, you just burned through caregiver after caregiver after caregiver, I usually say if it's one or two or three, it's kind of on us. We've probably made the mistake, but we really go back and we learn and we try to figure out. When it's multiple times, then it's much more likely that the expectations of the client are probably not right. And so it may have to be, and I'm sure there's exceptions to this, but it may have to be that someone has to adjust their
Right.
expectations. Kind of going back to the what we had talked about initially. Now, I think another thing is that people will say is, I wish I knew it wasn't just about care, but it's about connection. So it's not just the mechanical things, making meals, bathing, medication reminders, but I think families will soon discover it's also about connection. The gal that took care of my mom was really wonderful with her. She picked out things because she knew my mom so well that others would have not seen. Eh, Was she a great homemaker? No, she
Yeah.
really wasn't. But she was really good at some critical things, and so like she wasn't the type to wipe out the inside of a microwave if she cooked it and it splashed on it. So it was a simple thing. They had such a good connection that just once a month I had a house cleaner come in and do a cleaning
Yeah.
because she had all those other pieces that were so right. And she would dance with my mom to get her moving, and she would do all sorts of things that showed that they, were connected. I remember one of our caregivers knew that their client liked movies and old movies, and I think it was Thursday, but I'm not sure. It was one day a week they would have movie night, and they would watch these movies as a special event. And it was one of those connections they had with their client
Sure.
that made their life special. Um, did you see any of those types of connections happening with your mom?
So there were actually quite a few. There was this one woman who came on Thursdays. I think she came like at 11 in the morning and stayed till 5. And Thursday she called office day. And she and my mom would, and again, my mother was bedridden, blind, didn't know she was blind, but they would talk about different things they were doing in the office. And
Mm,
um, You would really think business was going on all day long. In fact, one day I came in to give my mother some lunch, and she said, "It's not lunchtime. We're busy." And she shooed me away. But every time this woman came, that's what they did. Um, and I wish I could remember her name because she was just delightful. There was
Yeah.
there was another woman who actually was the one who was doing my mother's medication up until this all happened. Her name is Robin, and my mother used to call her her little bird. Um, and Robin would sit there and she would sing songs with my mom. And she would ask my mom to tell her stories about me and my brothers. And I think Robin learned more about our family than I even remember. Uh,
Wow.
and then there was one other who actually she's become registered nurse and she's going on for her master's. So, and she's still doing home care. So your your comment about, you can get people that have high degrees that are doing this. Um, but she used to come in and talk about her little boy. And she was an African American girl, and her son's name, I don't even remember what it was, but it was some Jamaican name. My mother decided he had to have a Jewish name. So my mother called him Shloimi. And from that point on, the conversations always were about Shlomi. So when these three people came in, they had their connections with her,
Yeah.
but they brought them to me as well because I was there. So if they left, if I needed to change the subject with my mom, I could talk about these things. The only thing my mother wouldn't let me do was work with her because she told me I was too slow. I really wish I knew what work we were doing. But there were others who were good. Like you said, they came in, they, knew how to change her, they knew how to bathe her, they knew how to get her to sit up, but they didn't do a lot of communication with her. So
Right.
when they were there, if I felt my mother needed that, I made sure I was in the room. They were there to take care. I was there to be daughter.
And here's the critical thing is sometimes we think about care as doing something for someone, but it's also about being with them. And I think we cannot overlook that part of it. One of the things that I believe that COVID taught us, and one of the great um, disasters that happened with COVID and why we saw such big decline, is because we saw how much connection played a role in our health.
Right.
And what you noticed with COVID was that that whole um, thing of connection got disrupted. And that disruption led to very significant health issues that happened because of it. And so um, I think that we cannot forget that human touch, that connection, that piece, and understanding what care truly is about. Now, another thing I think people will say um, uh, is it's really this concept of I wish I knew I didn't have to do it all by myself. And so often um, people think that it's on me. It may be a spouse of the person, it may be one of the children. More often than not, it's a woman rather than a man that is having those feelings. And here's one of the things that people have to understand. You don't have to do it all, and you actually shouldn't. And that is critical. You should not feel like you have to do it all, or you shouldn't do it all. Yeah, I guess sometimes we can't fully control what our feelings are, but we can re kind of direct our feelings to understand it's really not right to feel guilt. That somehow asking for help means that we've failed. Home care isn't a replacement for family. It's a support system for family. And that is really important for people to understand, that it's there as a support. One of the things that, um, even in the notes that I send to people, I make it very clear when I'm sending a note to someone that, we're helping them with the care, because we know that ultimately, um, that as a family member, you feel like you own that care, and we're there as a support, and we're there to bolster, to help. Now, I know a lot of people find it hard to accept help. Did you or your siblings find it hard to accept help?
No, because I think we definitely understood we needed it. Um, Again, my one brother in California, we chose that he wouldn't come in because we didn't know if my mother was going to make it a day, a week, a month. At
Mm,
one point, they said this could be years. Um, and so it was like, well, what are you going to run here and do? My other brother could work from Michigan, so it was easy for him to be there as it was for me.
yeah,
But we both knew right from the beginning, yes, we're bringing her home. Um,
but we need help.
we need help. I'm also going through this now, long distance, with my oldest brother. Um,
Mm,
Both he and his wife both need help. Not him as much, but he is declining. He's actually losing his sight, and he at least made the attempt. He's going through the Braille Institute and getting
mm,
the supplies and the knowledge that he needs as he's going through this. But here I am in Ohio, he's in California, and um, he keeps telling me he's okay, but I can hear at times he's not. And I brought up, what if you had somebody come in for a couple of hours a day? Make
yeah,
sure maybe you can go grocery shopping. You're okay to do that, but making the meal is not something you can do, or doing the laundry. Find different tasks that will take some of that pressure off of you as he's trying to watch his wife and now trying to help himself.
right.
And
Yeah,
it's been difficult, but I keep planting the seed. And I've warned him that, not that I have any control over him because I don't, but if I think that he's not doing well, I will call for a wellness check. And if the wellness check proves that, he's not taking care of himself, then he's not going to have a choice. He's going to have to either move closer to me or closer to his kids. And
mm,
it's something you don't want to have to happen, but at least we've had a good conversation. He understands it. So we're having it maybe a little late, but maybe a little early. I'm not sure where we are in that process.
yeah.
But, siblings have to take care of siblings as well, because once our parents are no longer here, we're that older generation.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. This is yeah, it's kind of a weird thing when you realize that you've moved up in line. You know, so it's not necessarily a good feeling, but
Exactly.
at certain point in time in life, you realize, oh, I'm now at that stage. With your mom, did you feel like you got to the point of actually being able to be a daughter and not a caregiver alone?
Yeah, I did, except for when I had to give her the morphine.
Mm, hmm.
So most of the day I was absolutely fine. But when the caregivers noted that she was agitated, or I noticed that she was agitated, or there was some sort of sign that, she needed it. Um, Number one, I went into daughter mode and I would call hospice and almost beg them to come out to give it to her, which they
Yeah.
did. But they would walk me through it and make me feel that it was okay. And so I'd give her the morphine, and then I would sit with her like her daughter, and I
Hmm.
would talk to her and hold her hand.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize some of this till I started blogging after she passed away. And it
Hmm.
made me realize, yes, I had those daughter moments. And my brother definitely had his moments with her because he didn't play caregiver. The only place he played caregiver was, I think she may need medication. That was it.
Okay.
Um, and that was okay.
Otherwise, he kind
Because,
of delegated, which is good,
yeah,
and that's where we want to be. Is I tell people I want you to be able to be the daughter or the son, and not just the
right.
caregiver with that. And it's easy to kind of fall into that mode, and afterwards you kind of wish, gosh, I wish I had spent more time just sitting,
Yeah.
just being with this individual. um Another thing that I think is that people need to know is that oftentimes people will say, I wish I knew it would get easier. And what I mean by that is, at first, families are oftentimes really anxious about this whole process. They have strangers in the home, they have new routines, there's uncertainty. I don't know if I can do this. And, but at some point in time, like so much in our lives, they later will say, that it started to feel natural. It was the new normal,
Yeah.
and that happens actually very quickly when it becomes the new normal. Now, sometimes that new normal can be very good if you're able to delegate it. But if you're taking all the work, the new normal, can almost feel unbearable. And
Right.
that's one of the critical things is you have to delegate until you feel like, it's not all on me, and you have that sense of I guess peace, that and not like constantly anxious. But
Yeah.
but it is.
I was lucky because I had my brother, I had my cousin who lived in the area, and she used to take my mother to doctor appointments and stuff. And
Mm,
so when I would start to get agitated, like, I can't do this anymore, I need to go for a walk, I knew that I could count on them at least. Even some
mhm,
of the caregivers would come back in after their shift and
mm,
ask me if I've taken a break. And either they would go for a walk with me, or they would shoo me out of the condo and say, I don't care where you go, just go. Um, and that was helpful because I'm the type of person that if I take something on, I take it on 100%.
mm.
And if it weren't for them, I would have been sick the day that she passed away. But I was able to take my breaks and do what I needed to do. Just didn't sleep very well on the couch. That's all.
Well, here's the thing: is that all that anxiety that we have with starting something new, it is just that. It is the fear of something new. And once you get going, it feels normal. And that's one of those things where sometimes people hesitate to pick up the call and get some help because they think this is going to be too hard. I don't want to have strangers in. I don't want to have all these new things going on. I just want life back. And
Yep.
but the way to get life back, honestly, is by calling and making that phone call and getting a company in such as ours, so that it becomes normal, and so that things are taken care of, and it will feel like the new normal, as I mentioned before. Um, so, what's the biggest lesson families wish they knew before starting home care? It's not about surrendering control. It's about creating space for love. It's about saying, I want the best care for my loved one and for myself. And that's really what this is all about, is figuring out that thing and making that thing happen and doing it sooner rather than later. So, any other thoughts from you?
Well, we go on the internet and we research things, and we don't, I think sometimes we don't research the most important things. And one of that is, as you know, that either you're getting older, your parents are getting older, your siblings, whatever it is, maybe start researching. Look up
Yeah,
different companies, see what they have to offer, you know, find out what the cost is, um, and start preparing yourself. Uh, it's, I understand it now, and we talk about this monthly. So, of course, I'm even closer to it, but I share it with everyday people when I'm, just having a conversation. What do you have planned for yourself? What if you were to get sick?
yeah,
Does your family know what you even want? Um, as I said once before, my grandfather wanted to go into um, the home for the aged. He
yeah,
he lived with us and he said, I love you, but I don't want to be here. I want to be amongst my people. And so we moved him there. And for the first couple years before he got ill, it was terrific. He had
mm,
girlfriends and he was just happy as could be. Um, but my parents, told us, here's our living will, and no, do not put us in a nursing home. Um,
mm,
here's some funding that we do have, and we want to stay at home. And this before I even started doing this and understanding what home care was. And we
right,
had great home care for my dad. And again, except for a few exceptions, the home care for my mother was wonderful and they helped me. And
yeah,
they don't just help the individual, they help the family.
that's great. Yeah, I hope this episode resonates with someone, and if it does, and or you think of someone else that might need it, please share it. Let someone else know that these are oftentimes um, the questions that people have, or things that they may not even know to ask. And one of the things I know is you never know who's quietly struggling right around you, and needs to know that they're not alone in their feelings, not alone in what they're experiencing. So, from Care Notes and Cherished Companions, I hope that this has um, helped someone to be able to maybe navigate a difficult time in their lives. And the thing that I would wish on everyone is that we all take care of ourselves and the ones we love. So, yeah,
Absolutely.
thanks.
Thank you very much. We'll talk to you next month. Have a
All
great
right, take. All right, bye bye.
Bye bye.